abed, abed, abed. Definition: in bed, on a bed. Usage tips: old use or literary. For example, a bed in the dark, she listened to the rain. Abdomen, abdomen, abdomen. Definition: in mammals, the visceral cavity between the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, the belly. For example, the doctor pressed gently on the patient's abdomen to check for tenderness. Aberration, aberration, aberration. Definition: deviation from a right, customary, or prescribed course. For example, his decision to quit was a temporary mental aberration. He's usually very stable. Abdominal, abdominal, abdominal. Definition: of, pertaining to, or situated on the abdomen. For example, the athlete strained an abdominal muscle during the weightlifting competition. Abduction, abduction, abduction. Definition: a carrying away of a person against his will, or illegally. For example, the police are investigating a suspected abduction. Abbot, abbot, abbot. Definition: the superior of a community of monks. For example, the abbot welcomed the pilgrims to the ancient monastery. Abase, abase, abase. Definition: to lower in position, estimation, or the like. Degrade. For example, he would never abase himself by apologizing for something he did not do. Abbess, abbess, abbess. Definition: the lady superior of a nunnery. For example, the new abbess was tasked with overseeing the restoration of the ancient chapel. Abbey, abbey, abbey. Definition: the group of buildings which collectively form the dwelling place of a society of monks or nuns. For example, during the medieval period, many abbeys were important centers of learning and agricultural production. Abdicate, abdicate, abdicate. Definition: to give up royal power, or the like. Usage note: abdicate is often used with nouns referring to supreme power, such as the throne or responsibility. In addition to royal power, abdicate is also used to refer to giving up an important responsibility or duty. For example, a good leader must not abdicate their responsibilities, especially during a crisis. Abet, abet, abet. Definition: to aid, promote, or encourage the commission of an offense. Usage note: aiding and abetting is a very common legal phrase, meaning to be an accomplice or to assist and encourage someone to commit a crime. Abet is always related to giving support for a wrongful or illegal action, an offense. For example, he was charged with aiding and abetting the bank robbery. Abeyance, abeyance, abeyance. Definition: a state of suspension or temporary inaction. Usage note: in abeyance is the most common and fixed phrase, meaning to be in a state of suspension or temporarily not being carried out or considered. For example, the project was held in abeyance until the necessary funding was secured. Abhorrence, abhorrence, abhorrence. Definition: the act of detesting extremely. Usage note: utter abhorrence. This phrase emphasizes an extreme or absolute level of hatred or disgust. Abhorrence for or of. It is usually used with the prepositions for or of to specify the object of the hatred. For example, the public showed utter abhorrence for the politicians' deceitful actions. Abhorrent, abhorrent, abhorrent. Definition: very repugnant, hateful. Usage note: abhorrent is often used to describe a behavior, ideology, or something else that the speaker finds extremely hateful or causes strong disgust. The common phrase used is abhorrent to somebody, meaning disgusting or detestable to someone. For example, racism is a philosophy that is abhorrent to most civilized people. Abject, abject, abject. Definition: sunk to a low condition. Usage note: abject is used to strongly emphasize the severity or wretchedness of a condition or feeling. Common phrases used: abject poverty, extreme or hopeless poverty; abject failure, complete or miserable failure; abject misery, or deep suffering. For example, they were forced to live in abject poverty after losing everything in the war. Abidance, abidance, abidance. Definition: an abiding, abide, continue, wait for, endure, dwell. Usage note: abidance noun is typically used in form legal or administrative contexts. The common phrase used is abidance by, meaning compliance with or adherence to. For example, strict abidance by the regulations is mandatory for all new employees. Ablution, ablution, ablution. Definition: a washing or cleansing, especially of the body. Usage note: ablution is typically used in a religious or ceremonial context, referring to the act of washing or cleansing the body. The common phrase used is perform ablutions to carry out the ritual washing or cleansing. For example, before the ceremony, the priest performed a ritual ablution with holy water. Abjure, abjure, abjure. Definition: to recant, renounce, repudiate under oath. Usage note: abjure is a formal, strong word, and it is often used in political, legal, or religious contexts, carrying the meaning of publicly and formally declaring that one gives up something such as an oath, a belief, power, or allegiance. Common phrases use abjure an oath, abjure a faith, abjure allegiance. For example, during the ceremony, the new citizen had to abjure all former allegiance to their native country. Able-bodied, able-bodied, able-bodied. Definition: competent for physical service. Usage note: able-bodied is typically used to distinguish individuals who are in good health and are not physically disabled or impaired, especially when discussing the capacity to work or serve in the military. For example, the military only accepts recruits who are physically able-bodied and meet strict health standards. Abnegate, abnegate, abnegate. Definition: to renounce a right or privilege. Usage note: abnegate is a formal word meaning to refuse or renounce a right, privilege, or a benefit. Common phrases used: abnegate a right, abnegate a privilege, or abnegate oneself to deny oneself or to sacrifice personal benefit. For example, he chose to abnegate the privilege of using the company jet for personal trips.